Good afternoon. I'm glad to be here. Simon Mbevi is my name. I've run for politics before, but I'm currently involved with Makueni County Public Service Board, and also I'm aspiring politician come next elections. But also I run an organization called Transform Nations that focuses a lot on family and community transformation. What a privilege to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our other discussant, is he in a position to introduce himself?
Good afternoon. I'm really very privileged to be in this important summit. My name is Kibwana, Governor Makueni, a lawyer by profession, somebody who had the opportunity also to study theology at Africa International University, former NEXT. And I listened to Oliver, and I caught Bishop Oginde at the tail end of his conversation, and I'm really very happy and encouraged to be in this forum.
Thank you very much, Governor Professor Kibwana. We're delighted that you can join us all the way from Makueni. Thank you for being with us. And so let's get straight into the conversation. Thank you for a very, very compelling message, Dr. Kisaka. I think one of my quotable quotes from today is, "It's about food, my friends. At bottom, if you cannot eat, you can't remember any theories." That was really powerful. My sensing is that as Kenya, as the nation of Kenya, we are really in a moment. The whole world is in a moment. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, entire industries have been affected. People have lost livelihoods. People have lost the ability to put food on the table. Would you say a word to us on this issue? Actually, sometimes I look at the situation and I think we are reaching crisis levels, because your point today was really that if we cannot eat, we're getting to a place where people will be able to, throw away civil order, essentially. What would you say to the church at this moment?
Thank you very much, Dr. Linda. I would say that the church is in a very good position to do two things. First, to redirect all our surplus energy back to the farmlands. And perhaps as a Christian community, we need to come up with an innovative way of how we will provide markets for the goods of our people. I say that with good reason, because there are 4 ways the church can influence a nation. One is through evangelism, when people get born again and quit living badly. Second, through projects. Whenever churches do projects, their projects prosper because they sacrifice and they use integrity. And those projects always become popular. Thirdly, through advocacy for laws. Fourthly, through raising potential leaders, because the church can do this. Now, I say those 4 so that I would tell you that right now, one would be amazed that government is not putting much effort to reward farmers. And that all these young people, if they knew today that if you do farming, that you can actually prosper, they would actually redirect their energies there. And so the church perhaps needs to step in at this point and begin to create an alternative way in which farming can become profitable for the young people. I have too much to say on this, so I will not go beyond that.
Thank you very much. So, we heard you loud and clear. You're talking about the fact that in a country like ours, we have to prioritize agriculture. You've said that it's about food, and I'm pointing out the fact that in this context, we're in a situation that we're at a critical point. Because if people cannot eat, if they can't put food on the table, the next thing is a breakdown of the civil order. Now, I want to maybe redirect myself to Professor Kibwana. You, Dr. Oliver, have talked about the fact that there are certain things that the church can do. But I want to point out also that at structural level, in terms of the way our politics is structured, we have a serious problem. Because it's not just that we can reorganize the resources. We have a huge outflow of public resources. And I think Governor Professor Kibwana, I want to ask you, as an elected leader who is a believer, how do you navigate the politics in Kenya as a politician and as a Christian? Dr. Oliver has made the point that greed and corruption have taken over. So how does a Christian navigate in this nation called Kenya? Professor?
Very much for that question. And I really like the example that Oliver gave in terms of the duality of our citizenship. That is our heavenly citizenship, the citizenship of believers, as well as being a citizen of Kenya or a nation. And my understanding of that analogy is we should strive to actually make both citizenships come together in terms of the values that we pursue, so that as a Kenyan citizen, I should be a citizen in the way in which it is expected a heavenly citizen will be. When there is that concurrence, then I think we begin to apply ourselves in ways to help our countries and, of course, to deepen our faith. John 17:14-17 talks about we are of the world. We are of this world, but we are not also of this world. Through the word, which is truth, we do better than people who are simply of the world. And so, in terms of the practice of my Christianity, I do not compartmentalize my life. I do not have values for politics or for family situation, church, and so on. My guiding values are the values of my faith. And I profess it openly, so that anybody that I engage, even development partners who come to Makueni, we shall ask them to pray. We shall tell them, here we pray. Do you mind if we pray? Because if people know that this is Kibwana, then then they know that this is what we are dealing with, and he is not likely to compromise these values at all. And therefore, I really think that when we are over 80% Christians, that should reflect in the politics. Because if we use the values, our values as Christians, in politics, in the economy, in everything, then qualitatively, what we do in the world will be different. So I think for me, what has helped me is, like when I went to study theology, part of it was, how do I want to be a governor? How do I want my faith to influence that? And because I have persisted, I have tried to persist in that. As a result, I think people, accept that this is Kibwana, this is this kind of governor. There are things that he will not do because of his faith. He will work with the religious people in government because for him, those values are important. And so I think it is that persistence. And I think that is what Oliver was really emphasizing on. How do we manifest our salt, our saltness? How do we manifest our light? And that is therefore the challenge. Where is our voice as Christians in politics, in whatever. And as I conclude, I think when in the church, and I think he made this, Oliver made this particular point about how the biblical interpretation, because you'll find people in church, we are being taught the word and we are being taught how we should behave. But then when we step out and go into the market where a politician is campaigning, we are the same ones who receive bribes. So I think that dichotomy, we have to work hard on that, particularly the Christian leaders, as well as Christians ourselves.
Thank you very much, Governor, Professor Kibwana. Let me ask that you would speak into the same question, Bwana Simon Mbevi. You ran for an elective position. And I think Dr. Kisaka talked about the fact that in this country, people are willing to pay huge amounts, even and up to including taking loans to get into elective position because they're clear in their minds that once they get there, they will be able to recover all. You ran for a position. What would you say to people who want to navigate politics in Kenya? They're listening. Dr. Kisaka also said something about the fact that the people with ideas, the ones who are in the seats now, have no ideas. And the ones who have ideas have no courage. Kindly speak to us. We are sitting here, we have ideas, we don't have courage, and you've been there. What would you say?
Well, that's a very good question. I think I like what my governor, the professor, said, that number one, you need to introduce yourself as a Christian. Once people get to know you as a Christian, for those who will be running, then they get to treat you in a certain way. I remember last time when I was running, the people would invite me and say, they would call me pastor. There are things here we do, but we know you cannot do. So it's okay. We'll eat the money of the other politicians, but for you, we'll pray for you. And just the fact that they get to know you as a Christian. I was using a verse, Isaiah chapter 60, verse 1. Arise and shine, because your light has come. And in fact, eventually they began to call me that name, Tisuka in Kikamba, which is shine, and I'm still known by that name. So once people get to know you in that way, then it's a lot easier to deal with them. But then how do we survive in the place of politics as we seek to engage? I think I would say ABCD, just 4 things. Number one, acknowledge that there are challenges out there. There are bad people in politics. The people would lie about me and say things which are not true. The people would go telling everyone where I had a rally that I have told them I'm not coming, so they go back home. So there were just a lot of dirty things that some people out there are willing to do. There are those who would give handouts of money the night before the elections. And I hope that can be handled a lot more better in terms of law. But acknowledge that there are challenges. Be aware of the challenges out there. Don't be naive. Be aware that even though we're not of this world, we are in this world, and it's a fallen world. Be bold. Be bold to do what is right, even when it costs you your seat. I won the nominations, pretty well. My name was announced as a nominee of the party, but then 2 days later, the nominee was different because a few million shillings exchanged hands. And I had to stand for what is right. Some people were telling me, hire some goons and go and storm that house, they'll give you the certificate. But I had to say, well, I'm bold enough to stand for what I believe in, even if I lose a political seat. I think to be able to say, I'll stand for my faith, whatever comes. I don't want this seat at any cost. I want to remain a Christian in the way that I engage. So be bold to stand for what is right and to do what is right, no matter the consequences. Thirdly, is have a community of believers around you. So when it was clear God was inviting me to run, I told some of the good friends around me who knew me well, knew what I stood for, this is what I'm getting into. I need you to hold me accountable. I need you to pray for me. I need you to listen to what I say out there in the public arena and then talk to me as well. I need to come to you as my community of believers and say, this is where I am. What do you think I should do from a Christian perspective? So I think to abandon community as a Christian political aspirant is really to go into danger. So make sure you have a good community around you of believers. So A is acknowledge and be aware of the dangers and issues out there. B is be bold to stand for what is right. Joshua chapter 1 verse, several verses there. It says 3 verses in Joshua chapter 1. It says be bold and be courageous. Thirdly is community of believers around you. If you just have worldly people around you, they're going to teach you how they do things. But if you have Christians around you, that are going to encourage you, pray with you, counsel with you. D is depend on God. I remember those days when I was campaigning, every morning I would spend an hour with the Lord in prayer and in God's word. And sometimes God would give me strategies of what to do. So just the connection with the Almighty God helps you to deal with certain issues. I'll give one example and finish. One of the days I went for a political rally at an opponent's place. And as it were, the opponent had said I shouldn't speak in that area. The young people should get me out violently. And so I went there and they had stones and they were there and they said, you're not speaking here. And I said a quiet prayer. I said, God, what do you want me to do? And I felt God say, just tell them to sit down and pray for them. So I told them, guys, it's okay if you don't want me to speak. Sit down. Let me pray for you. Put your stones down and then I'll go. And they sat down. I prayed for them. And after I prayed, one of their leaders said, okay, speak to us for 10 minutes. Well, I ended up speaking for an hour, and then they quietly escorted me out. I think just us knowing that we have resources beyond what other politicians have, that we can depend on God to give us wisdom, counsel, and grace in the midst of this murky political waters. I think those are the 4 things I would say for now.
Thank you very much, Bwana Simon Mbevi. Governor, let me come back to you. We're talking about the church as a citizen, and Dr. Oliver has really ably helped us to understand our dual citizenship. Dr. Kisaka, you talked about the fact that we are first of all born Kenyan, and then we are born again. And so there is no rationale, in a sense, for overemphasizing our spirituality and, in a sense, ignoring the fact that God has caused us to be created and born in a specific geographical location here on earth. And so you've given us a lot of handles on engagement. Governor, I want to celebrate your success in Makueni County as far as public participation is concerned. I think this has stood out in our nation, and many have spoken very, very positively about what has been done. Unfortunately, this is not the experience with regard to public participation across the country. It is a constitutional requirement that citizens should participate, citizens should engage, but in many, many counties across this nation, and I actually do have some first-hand experience on this, what happens is that county governments actually create token opportunities for participation. Very, very short notice, huge, thick 75-page documents for citizens to peruse and to respond to in no time at all. And sometimes even restriction on who can come. What would you say to the church listening in as a citizen? Christians who are not going to run necessarily for elective position, but they want to participate, and they are facing huge corruption. What would you say to us, Governor?
I think in terms of what Oliver said about our citizenship in a country, that citizenship must have proper expression, because when the Constitution talks about the sovereignty of the citizen, and of course we know that the real sovereignty is with Almighty, But that expression is so that this citizen in the democracy that also was alluded to is actually a ruler. And that is why, for example, in our situation, apart from the national government and the county government, we have a third government. That is, people organize themselves from the village. And we have about 43 villages. And they have a committee that they elect. And we even make sure that in these committees, because there's at a village, there's at a place we call cluster, another place sub-ward, ward, sub-county, and then the county. We make sure that you have youth, you have women, you have persons with disability, even religious representation. So that, again, in that space, the religious leaders are able to participate, to guide, to pray for the people's government, to speak. And this government, this people's government, when we are doing budgets, like we are now at the tail bit, they say what is it that they want in their county, and we sign with them so that whatever they proposed, we sign, and the MCAs, our assembly, knows that those things will be done. Then we also have project management committees, so that they're in charge of their projects. And if the contractor does not do what they want, of course, the technical people are also guiding and the county administration. But if the citizens who are the owners of the project say that you have not done it well, then you won't get paid, because they must give a certificate. And there are many things that this government, this people's government, will do, because we were looking for a way of really structuring this participation so that it is real. One thing that I would suggest is within our congregations, if as we go on, there is civic education to demystify some of the things that have been our people have been told, like they've been told politics is dirty and all that, so that if there is after our services, there is a portion of civic education, because in the 80s and in the 90s, the church was very much instrumental in terms of helping civic education, even the advocacy of the Ndingis, the Njoyas, the Okulus, the Jues, and many people who said that this is not right. Let us make our politics right. So that civic education, and even though the church will pray for every politician, because Romans, 13 says authority must be respected and all that. But I think it is also important, because when, again, the church prays for everybody, even the corrupt ones, then the people get confused. They say that we can choose any of these. But even in that prayer, it must be pointed out that there are people who are doing certain things that are not correct, so that the citizen knows that. And in my view, therefore, as we go forward before 2022, the church really needs to engage, to have its own public participation, so that the members of our congregations are really helped to begin viewing politics in a different way and their participation in a different way. All those 9 things that we were told about by Oliver, so that people can know how to deal, so that there is a new awakening and a convergence, bring a convergence of the two citizens towards, especially the heavenly citizens. So I am tilting away from even what we need to do as politicians to the role of the church in terms of shaping this new narrative, so that actually now politicians realize, if I'm not aligned to the church, if I don't even subject myself to accountability, like I come to ask for prayers and I come to ask for support, but after that I run away, I don't come back for mentorship. I don't come back when I have, I'm cold and I've done things that are not correct, because if politicians realize that that will happen, then it will be, maybe they will behave in a different way. But I really must say that in the coming elections, we really need to see Christians coming forward the way Muslims do. By the way, Muslims are, they get into the politics, they get into the government, they get into places of power because they want to influence that power. And in the same way, the 80% or so more of Christians need to do this proactively so that we can secure our country, we can change the current narratives of 50 years, of more than 50 years of independence without pipe to water all over the place. And for corruption, I think the church needs to get to a point where they start saying that they will even shame people who are involved in corruption, not just to tell them, but to get to a point and say that, we are going to be in a position to say that this is not correct and you are hurting the country, you are bleeding the country. That might be a bit radical, but maybe this is something that needs to be considered so that politicians don't believe the church just prays for them and supports them, and when they do wrong things, the church does not sanction them.
Thank you very much, Governor, for those very insightful comments. I want to move our conversation to the floor. I want to take a couple of questions from the floor, and I know that our virtual audience also have some questions. I've received two here, and I just want to open up this conversation so that we can hear your reflections, your feedback. I can see some hands up. I'm trying to make sure that we work with the not more than 2/3 gender rule now that I have the mic. My sisters, I'm not seeing your hands. Yeah, allow me to do that. And this one is in honor of our new CJ. So madam in the red dress, you go first, and then the gentleman right here at the front. Let's take 2 questions and start there and see how much we can accomplish. I request that you just keep it to a minimum while being clear so that we can see how many questions our panelists, our discussants can take up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm Susan Kamiru from Central Region, Laikipia County. I want to ask, in the line of when the righteous are in authority, people rejoice. I want to ask the church, how prepared are they to take the position of leadership in this country and save this country? I also believe that if we want sanity in this country, we need to take or to be represented in 3 arms of the government. I want also to ask the church, how are they going to deal with the challenges of resources in the church, which makes the people not to go to the politics because maybe they don't have resources. Thank you and God bless you.
All right, let's take the second question from the gentleman at the front. I think we can take 3. We can take 3, so we'll come to you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ombaka Vincent, a member of Kenya Christian Lawyers Fellowship. My question is, how can we create, as Christians, a Silicon Valley that can be able to give easy access to ethical leadership? Because there seems to be a very deliberate and very effective system supporting corruption. Today, if I was willing to be compromised and I know a few people and they feel I am strategic enough and there was an election, I can assure you I would be on a billboard immediately. How can we find ways in which, so that the people who have the ideas can be able to have a platform where even if we are going to do some simple things as Christians, where you're saying, we have a system where if we think we believe in Simon Mbevi, some few costs like social media, we can sponsor you on our website. We know somebody, maybe Bishop Oginde here now that he has recently moved out of church, may be willing to introduce you to a few people whom we think can be able to support you. That's what I'm calling a Silicon Valley. I'm borrowing that from technology because if you have a good idea in technology right now and Silicon Valley picks it up, it booms in a minute, and that's why Mark Zuckerberg can move from being a second-year student to being a CEO. It means there's a system which puts staff and what and everything in place. And to Oliver Kisaka, maybe something you had mentioned, since all these systems of government lead to a few people having a monopoly of power, and looking at our scenario in Kenya, what would you say of us just having a negotiated democracy? Because I feel like we constantly have the same players on the same chessboard, and we are spending so much resources to choose from people whom we already know 10 years in advance. So why don't we just come up with a cheaper system of these characters? Because they are not changing anyway, we can decide, okay, we can vote for you by parliament and save ourselves the church rounds and the funeral rounds and the wedding rounds and whatever other rounds are happening, as a suggestion.
Okay. All right. People are speaking, and I want to give place also to the questions from our virtual audience. So let me just take one more from the floor. Then I will share some of the virtual, maybe two of them, for the discussants to engage around, and we see how we do on time. Yes, sir. At the front, yeah.
Thank you so much, moderator. My name is Dr. Edward Nzinga from Pan-Africa Christian University and the National Church Council of Kenya. On March 10th this year, I appeared before the National Cohesion, Equal Opportunity and Regional Integration Committee of the Senate, and they asked me this question. I was then representing the head of the chairman of the NCCK. They asked me, you gentlemen from the church, you are part of the problem in this country. Then I asked them how. They told me you are the people who are calling politicians in your churches, and you know how these guys are living. At the end of the day, I told them that we have no authority to discipline anyone. For the discussants here, what is it that we can do, even before we go to elective politics, clean our own house? Thank you.
All right, I think those are weighty questions. Maybe let's just take those ones first for the sake of remaining clear. Bishop Oginde, I hope that you heard that you are being called upon to vie. We shall come to that. Don't think there's no escape. But for our panelists, and Dr. Kisaka, we are not excluding you. You also talked about those who have ideas and have no courage. We have been riveted by your ideas, so we are watching this space carefully. However, for the sake of this session, I think the questions were, is the church ready to take up leadership? Others were, how can we find ways in which those who have ideas can be identified? These are questions for all of us as the panelists. I think we'll just start with you, Dr. Oliver, and then I'll move to you, Bwana Simon Mbevi, and then Governor can weigh in. And I think the other one was, what do we do? The same monkeys, but different trees. That's what I heard. And then the other one was, the church is part of the problem in this country. What can we do? Over to you, Dr. Oliver.
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to thank very much the questions that have come and also the contributions from my fellow panelists. Prof. Kibwana has certainly demonstrated to us that it is possible to provide a godly leadership in a context of Kenya and actually succeed. And I keep saying that there are a number of things we as a Christian people need to think through soberly, not emotionally, soberly. One of them is this, that Christians tend to judge one another out of what they miss in 100%, whereas Muslims commend one another out of what they get above 0. I don't know whether you appreciate that. Yes, Christians will attack you for 5% you have lost. Even, you know, when I was in class studying, if you got 60%, the teacher did not tell you useless. He said, can do better, you know? So he recognized a process of development that was creating somebody. If we are going to be involved in these public spaces, we must recognize that these are sinners born by the blood of Christ, being developed by God's Holy Spirit to grow into the fullness of the stature of Christ. They have not arrived there yet. And so we should commend them for their engagement rather than destroy them for what they could not get. And so is the church ready? Yes, the church is ready. I think what we ought to recognize is, I already said that there are about 6 dimensions within society. Some of us have a calling and the gifting to run political offices. Others have the gifting and calling to run in the economics environment, business leadership, creation of jobs and things related. Some of us have the gifting and calling to facilitate our interaction one with another, education, medical services, and all this. Others of us have the gifting to provide the softer side of life, the suits we wear, the music we listen to, the football that we watch. Others of us have the capacity to function in the ethical dimension where we determine what is right and what's wrong. And others of us are called, like the Levites, to focus on worship and facilitate the community to worship. And so I have been asked a number of times, actually, why I'm not running. I'll tell you as a short story. When my father passed on, one of my grandfathers, you understand that in African culture, the youngest brother to my late grandfather, stood up in the funeral and he told me, Oliver, even if you became the Pope, if you don't get a Bible for the Tachoni people, you are a liar. See, that was a very heavy statement on something very nice. I had thought about getting a Tachoni Bible for very long. But when he stood up and he said it in that meeting, I decided whatever it takes. And I want to thank God, because where we are now, I think we are halfway past trying to get that Bible. And then a community leader saw that initiative and he called me and said, Oliver, have you ever thought of buying? I guess he was telling me, here is an open door because the community is feeling very nice about what you have done and they could easily put you in. But as I sense my calling, I'm not sure that God has called me to function in Parliament. I think there are more issues that I am involved in. So I just want to say, it's not that I can't function in Parliament. Many of you know that I offered myself to serve on IEBC. I was even interviewed. Oh, I think one of the panelists is here, so he can attest to that. I was not taken, and I felt, well, thankful. God is not calling me to this area. So each of us must determine where we are called. What I would like to caution, Prof. Kibwana has said, when I thought of running as governor, I even went to theological school to try and train myself. What does it mean to function in high office? You're not being called to Parliament to pray, although prayer is important. In other words, you should pray, but in Parliament, the business is not prayer. Yeah? The business is making laws. Yeah. So sometimes I think we are casual. We say, God is calling me to be president. Have you even thought about the dynamics of what it means? Have you trained? Have you developed? And I guess this is the importance of this kind of meeting, where we begin to discuss with one another and to highlight the critical issues we need to be thinking through as we prepare ourselves for this public service. Otherwise, I think everybody here is competent to be able to function in any of these offices once we are able, we offer ourselves. Silicon Valley, I would say, this is a kind of thinking that is required now, because you need systems. Our brother Mbevi needs a system of supporters, of righteous people who can stand with him. If it was known that there's a particular brethren community whom if you go to, they will pray with you and they will guide you in 1, 2, 3 ways, it would be a boost to his running. So I just think, yes, this is the kind of thinking that is required for us to recognize that you don't just wake up and become an MP. You actually get involved and set up systems that are counter to the systems that are in place, which for all practical purposes are corrupt systems. So that's what I would say. And Prof. Kibwana has said civic education. I think we need to go back to the people with civic education and help them appreciate. But I am again emphasizing that our people are greatly vulnerable, because when somebody offers them 50 shillings, 100 shillings, it comes at their point of desperation. And they are saying, you are pontificating to me about righteousness. My children have not eaten for the last 2 days or 3 days. I can see 100 shillings. What are you talking about? So there should be a strategy. We must be holistic in the concept of how we are going to approach a reorganization of society. And I'm saying there are some things leaders can do, but most of the things it is us citizens to do. If we organize ourselves properly, we will find the politicians turning around to actually follow us, because they think we are the ones who know where we are going. That's why I talked about the church's projects. When the church gets involved in projects, many, many times those projects succeed. And those projects succeed, they attract political interest. I can't tell you how many times the church took over NCCK, the government took over NCCK projects because the projects were too popular and they did not want the church to become more popular than it already was. Okay.
Bwana Simon Mbevi, maybe you can, not saying that you can't speak into what has already been mentioned, but a couple of the other points that were raised, same monkeys, different trees. How do we proceed? And then the church is part of the problem. What is it that we can do?
Well, these are very good questions, and this is a very good conference. I think I look forward to us building out of here. The suggestions being brought forth in terms of Silicon Valley, in terms of us presenting more people, our people of the faith, into different places. Maybe just to add before I come into that is, it would be hard for, if I became a governor today, for example, to be hard for me to function without righteous people as MCS. And then good people in chief officers in the different departments. And then, of course, good policemen who are not going to harass the righteous people in the county as well. So I think I like what Oliver is saying, is that all of us need to understand our calling. I've been involved in politics for a while. It's not something we rush to because we see an opportunity. It needs to be a calling that you feel God has called you and you're equipped and prepared to be part of it. So I think I would say we need networks, not just a few people at the top, but from the very bottom to the very top, that we have Christians scattered all over practicing their faith. And it's going to be easier to win, so that it's not only at the top. But also to say, I think, as we look at the kind of leaders that we need, now that we are saying we are cycling the monkeys, we need to define what's a good monkey. And a Christian monkey. And I think I know that in this conference we're going to talk about the qualities of a good leader, but out of Psalm 78 I've been looking at 5 of them. That yes, you could be a good Christian, but if you don't have these qualities, you may not be able to do the business in parliament or run a ward or run a governor, become a governor. 5 things very quickly. Number 1 is character. That you have demonstrated convictions and values that are not going to quickly be, taken away by the wind of politics. That you're a person of character, good convictions, you do what is right, you fear God. Number 2 is competence. That you're competent to be a governor, to do what it takes to be a governor. You're competent to be an MCA. So it's not just about you having faith, is can you do the job? Do you have the qualities to do the job? And I think as we go towards elections, we'll talk about all of those positions and what they take for them to happen. So competence, because you could be a Christian, but you're not competent to be a governor, but you're a great person, a great pastor maybe. The next one is a compelling vision. Compelling vision, because yes, there isn't much money to support a lot of the Christian, politicians, as I have seen. But I have seen when you have a clear vision, even non-Christians will support you. I was talking to a non-Christian business person the other day, and I thought my vision for what I want to see happen and how to deal with corruption. And he said, even though I'm not a Christian myself, I'll support you because I think it will help the nation if you do that. So just a clear, compelling vision that will make both Christians and non-Christians be able to say, that's a good cause. That's the vision we have for this county or for this nation. If we have clarity of vision, then support will come. The next one is conciliatory. We're coming out of a very divided, nation. I think BBI, part of it, what they told us was to try and unite the nation. So I think we need leaders who are conciliatory, who are not us versus them. Not I am better than the others, but us together, let's build a great nation. Conciliators, those who will bring everyone together for the dream nation all of us have had. And lastly, we need people who truly care for the people. I think a lot of the monkeys in the trees right now, they are there for themselves. And you can tell from their conversations. But we need people who can say, I really care for the people of Makueni, like I've seen with my governor, that he cares. And several other Christians who are in leadership. I care for the people. I'm here because I want to lift up others, not because I want to drive a big car and live in a better place, but they truly care for the people. So I think as we begin to do that, then other institutions like a Silicon Valley surrounding those leaders and supporting them, and ideas which are going to come out of this conference will begin to help us. About the politicians coming to church, I think I'll emphasize what was said earlier. They are open to come to church. When they come to church, they should hear God's word and be directed by the truth. The truth is a sword. Let's lift the sword and let everyone hear the truth. And maybe some of them will even come to the knowledge of Jesus Christ. I think what is wrong is for us as leaders, Christian leaders, and I think this will be subject of conversation later, for us to endorse people that we know very clearly are corrupt, and everybody knows. Then at that point, our credibility is on the line. When we keep, endorsing and celebrating leaders who are definitely getting our nation into corruption. Lastly, this is what I would say. I think I'll give a very passionate appeal. We have dreamt about a good society, a just society. We have prayed about it. Many of us as Christians, we have prayed about this nation and where it would go. Let's not be, play to the parable of Judges chapter 9, where we say we are olive trees. We are so anointed that we can't get involved, sway over trees. Or say we are fig trees. We have such good fruit. We don't want to waste it in politics. Or say we are a vine. We are so, skilled that we can't take our skill to the public arena. If we do that, we'll end up with thorn bush leaders, who are the monkeys in the most of the trees right now. Thorn bush leaders who have no shade to offer, and they have violence to give and threats to give to the nation. I pray that many of us will be stirred up here today in the different places of calling for us to build a kind of network that God will use in our nation to deliver our country.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think let me give Governor Professor Kibwana the chance to speak into the last couple of questions. And I want to do this because I do recognize again that the online participants in this summit have also been contributing. And so I want to merge two questions and then one other one, Professor. Two questions, one from Carol Kwasa. Carol is asking, how can we as Christians caucus, organize, campaign, vie, and benchmark in the political world? And then I want to merge that with Edward Mwakio's question. He's asking, the question still remains, how should we, the church, organize as we approach 2022? What should be the organizing question, Professor? And I want to just again put in context, and I know we know, as we are now seated, Kenya's public debt is at 8.5 trillion. The unemployment rate, or the potential labor force that is unemployed, is at about 3.2 million. And we're given to understand that Kenyans have About 1 million babies every year. So we've got about 1 million people entering the labor force every year. Governor Professor Dr. Oliver said, it's about food, my friends. It's about food. Forget the theories. I think if I would push it that far, Dr. Oliver, you didn't say it that way. But Governor, these are the questions that people are asking around what can and should we organize ourselves. And then a side question there, not to overwhelm you, but somebody is asking, Governor, did you buy lesos and t-shirts for your campaign? What did you do? This one is a parting shot when voters demanded cash from you. And I think we'll leave it there for today. Professor.
Thank you very much. I want to also weigh in about, and I think even these other questions about how we organize ourselves for now and for 2022 are related to the first question of how prepared are we as the church to be able to do what is needed to really change how things are happening within our country. One thing which I think is very important and is beginning to happen is the leadership of the church is coming together, and it is expressing matters about how the country is going forward, about our politics, about our economy, and so on. And to some extent, they are effective because the politicians have begun to react against them. And when the politicians react against you, it means that what you are doing is effective. And as a result, when, for example, some of the church said the BBI issue is becoming divisive and perhaps that discussion needs to be postponed to after elections, the politicians came out saying that the church is interfering with politics and so on and so forth. I think that this needs to be, the leadership of the church needs to continue being together, continue saying we are in a dangerous place in our country, the debt, the unemployment, and all that, the threat to devolution, the corruption, and all that. That is very, very, very important because the members of our faith will get direction from what the leadership of the church is saying. And so just like in the 80s, in the 90s, and so on, when the church realized that we are at a bad place, we are in a similar bad place, and it is necessary that voice is consistent, it is loud, it is visionary, prophetic, and so on. For me, that is a very, very major thing. And to talk about the law, the rule of the law, because if the politicians do not follow the law now, then it's like they are telling, like the young people, like what happened in the Arab world, the Arab Spring, and all the places in the world, where people say we are on our own, we now will rise up, and there will be chaotic change. So again, the leadership and Christians generally need to say that there is a constitution, there are laws, those should be followed by everybody. That becomes very, very important. I think in this conversation that has started, and I think there was also the same conversation about how do Christians enter the political world and influence it more in terms of whatever capacity they have. I think we need to get this to every congregation, because even congregations have the capacity to say that people are looking for leadership. We know them. And these are the people who are genuine. These are the people who subscribe to righteousness. These are the people who can flower our communities, so that people know that the church will look carefully at whether you are an MCA, you are an MP candidate, you are a governor, you are whatever candidate you are. Because again, if through the civic education we are talking about, you know, that comes through. And even getting the leaders that we elected, we tell them, you came through the church and you say to us, we should support you, and we prayed for you, we did. We now want an accountability. What have you done? all these issues that are coming up, what are you doing to change them? Because until, and I think this point was made, until the political people realize that the church is an institution that you must reckon with, and they are asking that this corruption and all these negative things, like attacking devolution, so that monies are not coming to counties and all that. These are things that will not be accepted. And the basic question which also has come through in this discussion, do we really subscribe to, do we see ourselves as our blood is that of Christ, or is our blood that of tribe? Because that really confuses people. And the point was made that sometimes they are very poor and then they, want handouts, but they need to be told, you get these handouts during the elections, but after that, these guys don't come back to you. So don't you want to change the way you choose, you elect, so that we have a better society? So I'm just thinking that we need, in another very specific meeting, talk now about how do we caucus, how do we now organize, how do we do the civic education, how do we say which leaders can we believe in, how can we encourage, how can we even fundraise, to do all those things, so that the politicians will know that now the church, like it did during getting our new constitution, it's a factor, and it does not want us to slide into violence, to slide into those things. We need a special now follow-up meeting to be able to begin to discuss these things in a very concrete way. And finally, and this is a point that Oliver said in terms of projects, I think the church and other faiths, they do a lot of social
Okay, I think we may have lost the governor there, but he has made his good points. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you so much to our discussants and of course our keynote speaker. The audience, let me ask that you put your hands together, even those who are listening online, as we bring this session to a close. Surely your hand clap can be more compelling than that. We thank you so much, Dr. Kisaka. Thank you so much, Bwana Simon Mbevi, and thank you so much, Governor Kivutha. Let me invite our MCs at this juncture to take us through what needs to happen in the next session or two. Thank you.